Good afternoon, everyone. We're thrilled to have you join us for this somewhat special event, the Xynteo workshop on what we call leadership in action. I'm joined by Franco Fubini from Natoora today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him in just a moment. But before I do, I'm going to just explain a little bit about what's going on today and what you're in store for in the next hour. So we're going to be getting stuck into a discipline called futures thinking, which is this powerful approach for envisioning and shaping the future of lots of things. But today we're going to think about sectors and systems explicitly. And in the workshop, we're going to be using a tool called 3 Horizons Mapping. It's this thing you can see in front of you right now. And it's helpful for us to think about bridging the future that we want to envision and where the world stands today. This is kind of a recurring theme through everything we do at Xynteo. We're thinking about how we can operate in systems and drive change as organizations, as individuals, and as communities and ecosystems. So the reason why this is kind of interesting and useful to us is, and why this tool is kind of useful to us, is it helps us look at the present. It helps us understand emerging trends. It helps us design pathways towards long-term transformative change, and helps us see the interplay between the current system and the current systems that we operate in, So today we're going to think about the kind of challenges and disruptions we see on the horizon, how we can navigate towards that preferred future that kind of matters to us. So more about that in just a moment. The way this kind of shows up in our work at Xynteo here is we use it as part of our Leadership Vanguard Development Program, where we work with rising leaders across industries to think differently, challenge assumptions, and develop their leadership skills so they can build more sustainable futures for their organizations. And this strategic foresight is critical in an area of constant disruption where the future can seem uncertain and decision-making is particularly challenging. So to kind of inspire us on that thinking before we jump into this exercise, we are fortunate to be joined by Franco, founder of Natoora. I'm going to let him tell his story, but to give you a little bit of information, he's not only envisaged a more sustainable and transparent food system through his work, he's built a company that is working to transform the way we source and consume food. He'll share with us his vision today and how he's kind of thought about turning that into reality. And hopefully this is going to inspire us and give us some ideas before we jump into doing a little kind of a thought process on our own today. So some questions for you, Franco, to kind of kick us off and to get us moving. So how did Natoora come into being? Tell us a little bit about yourself. And what was your vision for this different kind of food system?
So first, thanks for having me. Natoora came to being, the idea first started here in New York. I was living here in the late 90s, working in banking, spending a lot of time cooking, which was my hobby at the time. So spending a lot of time, and I can trace the roots back to Natoora, back to that time. Particularly, we talk about a peach moment at Natoora, which occurred at a grocery store called Citarella. For those of you that are New Yorkers, I don't know if there are. Citarella's is quite well known, and the original store was up, or the second store they opened was up on the Upper East Side, not far from where I lived. And I saw a customer asking for peaches in the middle of winter, and I thought it was completely nuts that an individual would want peaches, which is a summer fruit, in the middle of winter. And that really is where the seed was kind of planted. All of that cooking that I was doing and trying to find good quality product then culminated years later in London in recognizing similar patterns, and that's how Natoora got started. So Natoora then got started in 2004, so 20 years ago later.
Very good.
20 years ago, yes.
And I guess when you thought about the world you were trying to build there, what were what you might call the weak signals of the future you saw, and this thing that you wanted to bring alive?
Weak signals as in the things that weren't working?
Yeah, or the things that you wanted to see happening but weren't yet happening in the world around you.
The main one was access. The main one was access to quality product. The ability to, as consumers in large cities, we shop primarily at supermarkets. There are some other avenues, but most of consumption goes through supermarkets. Here in the US, it's over 80%. In the UK, it's about 90%. So the big thing was access. It was the ability to be able to go into a local supermarket and be able to access primarily fruits and vegetables, but not just, but primarily fruits and vegetables that tasted really amazing. that I knew were out there. I knew that the restaurants I thought the restaurants had access to them. I knew that I had experienced them growing up. So that was the real thing. The second piece to that, which feeds on from it, is the seasonality, right? This idea that I wanted to see people reconnect to nature and have a bit more of an instinct towards seasonality. So essentially not wanting strawberries and peaches year round.
Wonderful. And you've kind of hinted about that there. Were there things you wanted to see phased out in the food system? Things you thought were kind of structurally bad things that were happening, or consumer choices perhaps that were being made that you wanted to combat?
I don't know if at the time, I don't know if I remember that far back, if there were things that I actually wanted to see disappear, but I can tell you things that became clear. So ultra-processed foods, the diet that we have, I think, needs to evolve significantly. So I think a lot of our food choices, you can kind of bundle that around food choices. So not maybe getting rid of them, but certainly changing the food choices that we make. And a lot of that has been driven by the industrialization of the food system over the last 70 years.
Wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit about Natoora then, and kind of how it all works? How does your business intervene in this kind of system?
Yeah. So since we're here to talk about vision, right, or to develop visions, our vision at Natoora is to revolutionize the food system, and we try and do that through the sourcing of incredible fruits and vegetables, but not just. So the idea behind it is that we build these really cool, these really unique supply chains that connect. We see them as very capillary, right? So they go very deep into the regions to be able to source even just a single product from one farm for 3 or 4 weeks. So this capillarity gives us an ability to provide a lot of biodiversity, a lot of range, go really deep into seasonality, so that if it's asparagus season, we can see 3-4 varieties of asparagus. We bring that product into different hubs. So we operate in the US, in Europe, and in Australia. So you could consider those as 3 individual supply chains. So product moves from farmers and producers into our hubs, and from there it goes into distribution centers, so London, Paris, for example, and from there we supply our customers. So the product sits in our warehouses, and then it goes out to delivery to over 2,000 customers around the world in the cities that we operate in. And then we also partner with some supermarkets, depending on the region. We do some direct-to-consumer, we do some stores. And then on the non-commercial side, we have an education team, which is really important. We run a farm fund. We have a couple of our own farms. So we do some things which are more about delivering education and impact through non-commercial activities.
Sounds awesome. What were the kind of initial building blocks or the stepping stones you had to take to start to build that? It sounds like quite a complex model you've got on the go there. So what were those early steps to get you there?
I think something that was very important was a very consistent focus on a sourcing ideology, which is to really source for flavor. Scale is the biggest thing to overcome, because moving product becomes easier as you move more of it, which means that accessing the kind of product that we can access now wasn't available in the early years. So the steps, or those blocks you mentioned, were, it was scale, it was financial sustainability, which I think is something that, being here in Climate Week, and we talk a lot about sustainability, I think that financial sustainability is something that is fundamentally important, and impact starts with financial sustainability. So that was a really big milestone for us to achieve that then allowed us to invest in going deeper and deeper into the model that we have today, and building complexity, building these hubs that I'm talking about, and being able to continuously raise the bar on quality, flavor, and service through that scale.
Lovely. And who did you have to kind of influence and bring along the journey with you to make that work in reality, when you'd figured that was the model you wanted to deploy?
So the obvious one is staff, but I think one of the keys, which is also in part an answer to your previous question, one of the keys is the consumer. And in our case, a lot of our consumers are chefs, right? 65 to 70% of our revenues are chefs. So we can want to buy the best product, but if we don't have customers that are willing to buy it, that support that vision and that supply chain that we're building, it's meaningless. So convincing the chefs, which maybe was not as hard as some other consumers, but we still needed to convince the chefs that this supply chain was worth building.
And how about consumers themselves? Were the chefs able to directly influence them, or did you have to think about that kind of holistically and from end to end as well?
I would say it's a little bit of both, but it's a bit more holistically, as you say, and that required marketing and communication, which we continuously do, right? We still do that, a lot of that.
Wonderful, awesome. My last question for you before we kind of start to reflect, and I'm happy to take any questions from the crowd as well. What does it mean to you to be the kind of person or organization that's leading the way in this kind of new way of working? That's a very big question, I appreciate, but is that what drives you and your organization to exist, that you're leading the way? Or is it that you feel frustrated that the whole world is still on this other boring old paradigm that's not serving your ambition level?
No, I'd say it's the former. I think it's empowering to feel that we are leading the way. I know that we're probably not the only one, but we're certainly one of the pioneers in the space. So it's certainly encouraging. We always say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So even with our close competitors, you find some recognition in the fact that some of the things that you do and that you innovate on get copied. But I think ultimately it is a fun place to be in, where we feel that we're actually influencing positively the wider industry and the wider ecosystem that we operate in. And I think that does get us out of bed every morning.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So with that, we wanted to give you an example of a story of someone taking a kind of vision for a new way a system could work, and then stepping back into thinking of how you start to move from where you are today, essentially. So what we're going to invite you to do now, and we have some Xynteo folks amongst you who are going to take you through this, so don't worry too much about following these instructions right now. But we're going to work through the framework that you have in front of you. And the framework is called this 3 Horizons framework, and it essentially falls into kind of 3 key steps. Step 1 is to think about mapping the current state of your system. And again, your facilitator is going to help you think this through. But we have 3 kind of big bucket systems we want you to choose between. So as a group, have a think about what you want to play with. Number 1, sustainable food systems. So you might just want to take direct inspiration from Franco and think this through for food. The second is regenerative cities. So think about cities that are urban areas that have had nature integrated into them. What does that mean for you, potentially? The third is inclusive energy systems. So a world in which everyone can access clean, competitively priced energy that's available for everyone. So you're going to take one of those 3 worlds and firstly ask yourself, what does today look like? So on this graphic in front of you, the red line, the first bucket is, what does today look like? And we're going to just ideate that together, think about what today looks like. We're then going to skip to the third one and think about, what world do we want to build? And here, everything goes. Don't be held back by, well, you know, the world looks like this and it's too tricky for this to happen, blah, blah, blah. Just ask yourself, what do I want the future to look like? What is this ideal state? We're then going to come to the third piece in the middle, the third column, which is what has to happen to get us from today to this world we just created. And here we're going to think of who needs to be involved to drive change, what actions need to happen, what collaborations need to take place. And from that, we're going to have a quick chat to close off the session to think about, ultimately, what do we want to go out and do as a result? Who needs to be involved in driving change to make this vision a reality? A little bit like Franco's story of what are those stepping stone first pieces you can do to drive change. So I appreciate that. Quite a lot of stuff to do. Have some faith. The Xynteo team are going to take you through those steps, and Franco will be rolling around so you can ask him some questions as you go. Any questions from anyone on that? Hello, Ellie. Yes. Absolutely not. You do the one that you feel comfortable with. So this is a good point, actually. My facilitators are Ellie over here. Give us a wave, Ellie. Amy, I think maybe you can shuffle over here. Lara in the middle here as well. And they're going to take you through this activity. So you can grab some pens, grab some Post-it notes, and we'll call you back together in like, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and we can see how you've done. Okay, good luck.